Welcome, my friends, to the Sage of Quay Radio Hour, your home for free and critical thinking. And I'm your host, Mike Williams. We have a great show tonight. I recently had the pleasure of connecting with my colleague, Drake Bear Stephen. Drake is a transpersonal hypnotherapist, a past life regressionist, Reiki master, and shamanic healer. His practice is Drake Enterprises, located near the San Francisco area. And I promise you his extensive knowledge of energy healing and spirit will keep you fully engaged for the next hour. And my first question to Drake was to ask him how his life experiences have brought him to where he is today. Let's take a listen.
Okay, so I was a psychology major in college, and I would be always sitting in the back of the room, but finally raising my hand and saying, what about past lives? They have to have an incredible impact on who we are, who our personalities are, and all of this stuff. What about that? And the teachers will always say, oh, no, we don't talk about stuff like that. And it's true that in Western psychology, that all reference to past lives, future lives, the afterlife, all the spiritual aspects have been absolutely stripped away because they want psychology to be scientific. It has to be proven, and it has to be able to be reduplicated. And so it's kind of like reincarnation doesn't fit that model.
Well, you're proving them wrong. So good for you.
Wait till my book comes out, because I'm going to talk a lot about reincarnation and how it affects our gender identity.
So then after college, Drake, you had a long-term corporate career. And once you hit 50, you had a big shift in your life. And I was wondering if you could share with the audience what that shift was about.
When I turned 50, it was like I had walked through this spiritual portal. All of a sudden, I was just totally interested in spirituality and metaphysics and comparative religions. And I was just going ape. And I was like reading and studying, and I started taking classes. And I've come full circle now to the point where I'm actually writing a book saying, yes, reincarnation has an amazing effect on who you are today. So it's like, I'm finally going to get my piece, and I'm going to say it. But what really brought me into shamanism, which is one of my favorite projects or practices that I work with, is learning about two spirits. And two spirits were the people in the tribes and Native and North American tribes that were, just a little different, considered a lot of times to be the third gender. They were gay or transsexual or transgender and just had a different identity. But in these tribes, they were honored as medicine people. And their being a part of the third gender created a special gift for them, and the people actually honored it. And it wasn't until Christianity came in and missionaries came in that the natives began to feel like, oh, maybe this is a negative thing. Maybe we should be downplaying or ignoring this situation. And so it was learning about that, and myself being transgender and having already gone through a sex change when I was young. It was like, oh, well, maybe that's who I am. Maybe that I can learn much more about. And that really triggered me to get into shamanic work, and which eventually led me to hypnotherapy. And so it was kind of like, it was like coming home. Yes, I feel like I've had past lives as a Burdash, is what they used to be called. And I'm just kind of coming full circle again in my work in this life.
Drake, you had a career in the corporate world. Could you talk about that a little bit? What was that like?
Yes, I did. I was in telecommunications for 38 years.
If you reflect back on your corporate career and that experience, is there a connection between that life and the work that you're doing today?
Well, most of the years I was there, I felt like I didn't really fit in, and I was just doing it to make money. It was a way to really provide me the tools to go off and do the things I wanted to do. And I had a hard time creating a bridge between that corporate world and my spiritual beliefs. But I now, in retrospect, can see that it was truly a gift because it was like being very entrenched in the physical world
Hmm.
and the world that many, many, many people are in. And so it was like I feel now that I needed to be a part of that to understand how it works, what pressures people go through when they're in the corporate world. And I think it really grounded me, and gave me that perspective. Whereas there's a lot of people that, let's say, they'll, jump into college or jump into transpersonal or spiritual lives and don't really have that grounding in the physical world that so many people do.
I have to imagine that a lot of people that come to you to work on issues or whatever it may be, they're coming from that environment. Would that be a good assumption to make?
Yeah, it is. Obviously, everybody needs to make a living in one way or another, and I feel, that I'm sort of a bridge. So a bridge between worlds, between the male and the female world, the gay and the straight world, between the corporate world and the spiritual world. And so people are wanting to know, how can I have one foot in one world and one foot in the other and not feel like I'm split down the middle? How can I feel a whole person? And so, just through my experience, I believe that I can help people that are on kind of that, what seems to be a split path. And what I would even say to anybody is that wherever you are in your life is exactly where you're supposed to be. And those dichotomies or those things that feel out of sync really will, as you get down the road, they will come back and you'll be able to view them and say, oh, okay, that's why that happened. And this is the gift that I got from it.
I actually found the same thing because I spent 32 years in the corporate world. And I always felt like a fish out of water when I was there. I did it, I did well at it, but I just never quite felt very comfortable. And when I look back now with the work that I'm doing in hypnosis and past lives, having worked there, having been in that environment, gives me a reference point. It enables me to be able to really relate to the client. So I found that I can understand their pressures, I can understand their stresses, I can understand their anxiety. So I found it very helpful too. And like you said, wherever you are, it's where you're supposed to be.
I didn't know you were in the corporate world, but yeah, there we have a parallel.
We do have a parallel. It's very interesting. I find that a lot of people that are doing the work that you're doing and that I'm doing, that many of them have that background. They were there and then the shift took place, they transitioned, and now they're doing the holistic medicine or the alternative healing.
Yeah, I feel very strongly that this is a very transitory lifetime for me. I was in the army. It's been a matter of like putting down the weapons, putting away the warrior, transitioning to a spiritual life, having lived half of a life as in a female body and half in a male body, and having moved from one religion to another and changing my beliefs as I go along. And it's just a very transitory life. But I think what that does is show you what the polar opposites are so that you can migrate towards that balance point in the middle. So those are the types of clients that I'm going to attract, are those that are kind of struggling with the polar opposites but want to bring everything into balance.
That's interesting. So you were in the army also.
I can't even believe when I look back on my life, wow, I used to do that.
Well, I tip my hat to you because that's quite a shift. Now, Drake, you mentioned shamanism. Did you get involved in shamanic healing first and then hypnosis?
Yes, actually, I was involved with shamanism for maybe 7 years before I got involved with hypnotherapy, and I don't know, for some reason there was some resistance to the whole idea of hypnosis. But what happened was I had a between lives regression, and it so impacted my life, and it was so dynamic that I was like, I have got to learn how to do this for clients. And so I immediately enrolled in school and got certified as a hypnotherapist just so that I could specialize in doing past life regression work.
That's exactly what happened with me. I had my own session, and then after I had my session, it just opened the aperture, and I said, this is what I want to do. And I just stayed on that path.
Yeah, and now that I see both sides of it, is that shamanism and hypnotherapy are very, very closely related. They really are one and the same because you're dealing with that trance-like level, that access or that portal into the subconscious mind. And it's that alteration of the brain state. The shaman does that when they journey, and then the hypnotherapist does that with the client through guided meditation. So it's very similar in the goal and in the vehicle of getting there.
Could you explain, Drake, a little bit more about shamanism and shamanic healing? Because it seems to me to be an overused word these days. It's almost becoming generic for someone doing energy or spiritual work.
Yeah, truly. Shaman is becoming a buzzword, and actually, some people that are truly shamans are pretty upset about it. And so, I think we really need to perhaps develop a term that's similar to it, that means that, but that's separate. Because a shamanic practitioner or shaman, if you will, it's really a spiritual healing, and there are specific things that are common no matter what culture is performing shamanism. So the types of things that is worked on are like soul retrievals, extractions of entities, psychopomp work, which is helping people cross over when they're ready to pass over the veil. So it's like very specific things. The shaman has, if you will, on staff or on call, spirits, specific spirits that they work with, and in doing the work, they do a journey to find out, get wisdom from the spirits about what healing needs to take place. They'll actually go out into altered space and get soul pieces and bring them back, or do different types of work like that. So it's actually very different than doing energy work per se. And what I do is I do combine the shamanic work with energy medicine, because the shaman believes that the energy body, which is an overlay of the physical body, has a lot of imprints in it from past lives, past injuries, past wounds, deaths. All that is still held in the energy body. And by working on the energy body, you can clear a lot of energy, you can alleviate disease, illness, things like that. So it's a very specific practice. And, a lot of people want to jump on that bandwagon right now. But I believe it takes, a certain amount of training and spiritual understanding to actually become a practitioner. You'll notice that I would not even call myself a shaman. That is a term that a community will bestow on you if they believe that you're a good healer and that you're a good medicine person. I say I'm a practitioner because I use the tools that shamans use.
When you do the shamanic healing, Drake, are you in a trance? Is the client in a trance? Could you explain a little bit about how that works?
Well, that's a good point, because so the difference would be if you came for a hypnotherapy session, I would guide the client into a trance. If you come for a shamanic session, I go into trance and then I come back and perform work on the client. So that is the difference.
And what's the experience like when you connect with the spirits in trance?
Well, since I know that you do past life work, I would say it's on that level of realism, okay? So it's kind of like, well, it's not this world real. It's not as tactile as the physical world, but when you're in trance, when you're in the other worlds, the lower world or the upper world, it is called in shamanism, it's real on a different level, but it's real. I mean, you can feel it's real, but it's not the same as this dimension.
Okay.
So, you know how vivid a past life journey can be.
Yes.
It's so vivid, but yet it has that ethereal, energetic quality to it that you can distinguish between this life and that life. And it's the same, going to work with the spirits.
And you mentioned energy medicine.
Yes.
And could you explain what energy medicine is and what the benefits are to a client?
Okay, so yes, energy medicine is working on the energy body. As I mentioned earlier, that energy body overlays our physical body. It houses the soul. It's the spirit or the soul, and it has specific systems within it. So, like your aura that surrounds your body is part of the energy body, your chakras, which are the wheels of energy that keep you connected to the physical body. It has meridians, the meridian system. So the Eastern medicine people have been aware of energy bodies for thousands of years. And it also has other systems that weave in and out. They're all energetic systems. And so ideally, we want all of the energy to be flowing very nice, just flowing back and forth and balanced and just working properly. And if something doesn't, if there's blocks in there, there could be rips or tears to the aura. There's all kinds of energetic symptoms, if you will, where it's going to affect our physical lives. And so or an energy medicine person can go in and balance chakras, get him spinning clockwise and healthy, can work on meridians, can work on the aura, smoothing it, removing cords. So there's all types of energetic work that can be done on your body. And, it's really guaranteed that you're going to feel a whole lot better. I mean, it sounds all woo-woo and stuff like that because you can't really prove it or see it or feel it, but you will notice the difference.
Well, how do you detect client imbalances, Drake, when you do that work? How are you able to detect that there's problems with the aura or there's energy blocks? How does that come to you?
Well, there's several different ways. One is being kinesthetic, that if I pass my hand over a body, I can feel irregularities. You might feel hot and cold areas or ripply energy. You might feel rips, tears, cords, and that kind of thing. But I also use tools. For instance, working on the chakras, I'll use the pendulum on each chakra to see whether it's spinning clockwise or counterclockwise, if it's not spinning. So there's different tools that we use to identify. Also, I mentioned earlier about the fact that we do journey work. We can do that as like a pre-diagnostic journey just to find out what the spirits are saying is there. And then between that and the interaction with the client, always asking, what do you feel in your body? Where is it? What does it feel like? Is it moving? Is it doing this? Is it doing that? If it had a color, what would it be? If it had a voice, what would it say? So we're constantly, working with the client, figuring out between what I'm feeling and what they're feeling, what's going on.
What would be some of the symptoms then, Drake, a client would come in with? In other words, that would be indicative of energy flow disruptions.
Well, the most noticeable symptoms are lack of energy, feeling down, depressed, I run out of gas, somebody's sucking my energy out of me. The other thing is being in pain. Does pain stay in one place? Is it chronic? Have you had it most of your life? Does it move around? No matter whatever is happening, it could mean a different cause. And so we ask a lot of these questions. A lot of people are have fibromyalgia and conditions like that. They're in constant pain, and a lot of that is solvable by working on the energy body and by working with past lives. So in a way, going in and doing a regression on a past life is energy work, because if you're working on clearing trauma from a past life, that will clear up that piece in your energy body that's holding that energy, and that will change how you feel in this life. So really it's a combination of a lot of things, and it has a lot of symptoms. I mean, if you're having flu-like symptoms, perhaps all of a sudden one day you just feel out of sorts, you don't feel like yourself, or something just radically changed and you can't really figure out what caused it. So there's sudden onset of symptoms. And then there's chronic symptoms. They all mean just slightly different things, but working with the client, we can just continue to peel back the layers until we find that core cause. Many things are multidimensional. They may be many sources that are causing the aggravation, and we just keep peeling it all back until the symptoms are gone, and then we know we've cleared the core problem.
Is Reiki a big part of your energy medicine?
I always use Reiki.
Okay.
It's just beautiful universal energy. And so, a lot of times when I'm working on the energy body, I might be taking out things, taking out crystallized energy or taking out entities and stuff like that. And so when we do that, we always need to replace those places that we took out things with energy, with positive, good, balanced energy. And Reiki is a very good way to do that. And it's very relaxing. So Reiki is very intuitive. The healer doesn't have to know anything, just put the hands on, and the Reiki energy kind of knows where to go in the body. And it's a very powerful healing force.
What exactly is Reiki energy, Drake?
Well, the buzzword or the approved definition is universal life force energy. And it came down through a man who was a Japanese doctor. And in order to perform Reiki, you need to be attuned. So it's as if you were a radio and you had to get the crystal embedded in you that would tune to that exact channel so that you could pass it. So it's not energy that comes from a human person. It flows through the person, just flows through the body into the client. And another word that is synonymous with it is unconditional love, because really love is the highest form of energy there is. And so it's that universal love energy. Some people call it like Christ consciousness. That type of energy is what it is.
I've heard people also refer to it as chi.
Yes, chi, prana, mana. The many cultures have different names for energy, but it's all the same energy.
Now, with Reiki, Drake, there are various levels of attunement. We have levels 1, 2, 3, and sometimes a 4. 3 being a master and 4 being a master teacher. Are you a level 3 or a level 4? Do you teach Reiki?
I am a teaching Reiki master, so that's like the highest level. I'm able to attune people if they so wish to be, and I highly recommend that anybody that wants to be attuned to do it, because you can do it Reiki on yourself. You can do it on your pets, your family, your friends. I do Reiki for my food before I eat it. You can do it in situations where you're uncomfortable, like at the office, when you're feeling all those vibes, and you can just pass Reiki energy around. And so anybody can use it, and I highly recommend it.
Well, I'm a Reiki master myself, and I absolutely love it, and I wish more people knew about it, because the benefits of Reiki are just absolutely fabulous.
It is, and I've heard now lately that it's becoming mainstream that hospitals are having Reiki practitioners now come in and work on patients. And so Western medicine is finally coming to the realization of how beneficial Reiki can be.
Especially in the cancer treatment centers, they're using a lot of Reiki now.
Yeah, it's great. I love to see the Western medicine begin to blend with the Eastern philosophies and the energy medicines and all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. A long time coming, too.
Yeah.
Now, when I do Reiki, I tend to be able to get readings from my client. And many times, even guides will come through on behalf of the client. Do you experience those types of situations or dynamics also?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I feel like, I think it's because I have hands on. And whenever I have hands on, I seem to receive information. I can feel if one side of the body is out of balance with the other. And you just get all these sensations about things that are going on with the client. And I think that, the hands-on thing and also just being in that really quiet meditative state, it allows you to drop down, into that trance-like thing. And there you are. The spirits are all there. Their spirits are there. My spirits are there. And they'll pass the messages if we're open to hearing them.
Yes, yes, I find the same thing. Now, Drake, you had mentioned from shamanism, you then made your way into hypnosis. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So what was that transition like? You mentioned, well, you had a past life, and then that past life made a big impression on you, and that was really the catalyst that moved you over into becoming certified in hypnosis. Could you explain that a little bit and maybe talk a little bit about hypnosis in general and what that's like?
Okay, well, it just so happened that I went to a very kind of shamanic-based hypnotherapy school. It was called alchemical hypnotherapy, and the creator of alchemical hypnotherapy drew a lot of stuff from shamanism. So we did a lot of work with inner guides, spirit guides, and that kind of thing. So it was a natural bridge for me to go into that. Now in hypnotherapy, in the mainstream portion of it, which is very powerful to me, because you can go to a psychotherapist for years and years and years and talk out of your conscious mind. And I'm not putting that down. That's absolutely valid. But whatever's boiling in the subconscious may never surface. And it's that hidden thing that in the subconscious that is really a driver for who we are. And so I found in hypnotherapy that we have that ability to bypass the conscious and go to the subconscious. And some of the things that I found when I was getting trained was like, wow, I didn't even know that was there. And it was really nice to have it come up and get cleared. So, hypnotherapy, as you well know, can be used for many different things, for addictions and phobias, a lot of things. And I really don't work with a lot of those types of clients. Like I said, my practice is pretty transpersonal, working on the spiritual side of things. I don't know if you're familiar with the term. We call it conference room. And that is where, you guide the client into a hypnotized state and you meet all the sub-personalities that you have. And they all have a voice, and some are positive and some are negative. And so you work with all those personalities to get them to come to an agreement in support of you and what you're trying to accomplish. And I find that to be really powerful work.
I call that parts therapy, and I find it very effective also. A lot of times the clients are completely amazed by it. At the end of the session, they emerge and they're looking at you and they'll say, that was weird. These parts of them, I call them their sub-egos, came through and started talking about the issues, pros and cons, and it really is amazing. It really is.
Well, it is. It's kind of like, your whole life you have that voice in the back of your head that's going, trying to tell you what to do, judging you, analyzing everything, and you're just like about ready to smack it in the mouth. And then you go into this hypnotherapy session and you allow that voice to have it say, and then you find out why it's saying that,
right,
and who it's partnering up with. And then it's like, oh, okay. Well, we could turn this voice into something positive.
Yeah, no, it's very, very effective. And I use it a lot, especially when folks come in and they're looking to release some weight. Parts works very well with weight release because there's that part that doesn't want to release the weight. And so once you start having the conversation and you start talking about why it does what it does, you can start to come to an agreement and resolve the conflict. So I agree 100%. It's very, very effective.
Yeah, and I just noticed how you said release the weight. Now, see, because you're a hypnotherapist, you know how to talk. Because when I was studying hypnotherapy, I was like, don't ever say lose the weight, because the subconscious mind is going to go, oh, if I lose it, I have to go find it
exactly. Yes, that's exactly right. I was going to ask you a question about, you're doing more of the spiritual aspect. I guess you would refer to it as transpersonal.
Yes.
Some hypnotherapists only do clinical work. And what I found is that once I mix in that clinical with that spiritual transpersonal aspect, it really opens up the door to all kinds of ways to resolve conflict because we've just opened the aperture for more wellness and more healing to come through.
Oh, I totally agree with you. We can't do a total healing if we're only working with a part of who we are. And so we are physical and we are mind and heart and soul. And so many times the spiritual part just gets excluded, especially in Western medicine. And once we get to that holistic healing that you're talking about, we don't leave any part behind. Everything comes together, and when it's in sync, then it's a huge transformation.
Oh, it is a huge transformation. It's a huge shift. And speaking of huge shifts, if we move to past lives now, and that's a big part of your practice, if you could explain to the audience what exactly is a past life.
Well, past life in itself is almost a misnomer because time in the spiritual world is not linear. So in this world, it's linear and it's how we organize everything. And there's a past, there's a present, and there's a future. And we keep saying that way. But on the other side, everything happens concurrently because time is a different dimension. And so when we say it's a past life, it could be occurring right now. It could be occurring in the future. We could have a past life after this life that's in the 1600s, if that's the life that we need to experience as our next step. But that being said, a past life is lives that where we have existed before our soul. Our soul, even when we're incarnated on earth, there's a piece of the soul that's always in the spiritual world. And that piece, often called the higher self, has all the memories. All the memories we lose when we get born in this life. We lose those memories so that we can learn the lessons that we came to do. But the higher self that we can tap into from time to time has the memories of all the past lives that we've experienced and all the memories of the future lives. It has total access to the Akashic record, which is the record of anything that's ever happened at any time in the universe. So, I see past lives as a way for the soul to evolve slowly through different lessons, learning. Some lessons take many lifetimes to really get, and some will be gotten in one lifetime. So I believe that people come to a life with not only an overall soul purpose, there's a purpose that the soul is heading toward, or a reason for being, or kind of being mentored or trained for, but there's also a life purpose. There's like a life theme, and you'll notice in your life if you keep kind of getting hung up on the same thing over and over. Maybe it's a type of person that you're in relationship with and you're like, why does this keep happening to me? That's your life theme. And when you realize that, then you can have a past life regression on it and get a lot of wisdom about why it keeps coming up over and over, and perhaps that'll help shift all of that energy into a place of understanding. And once you come to that place, as Heinlein used to call it, once you grok something, you really get it. It just goes away because you've learned the lesson and you can just move on to the next thing.
Yeah, that actually happened to me. I just quickly, because this is your interview. But when I went for my past life, I actually was diagnosed with a shoulder problem. And I had arthritis in the shoulder, went to an orthopedic. He took x-rays. The calcium deposits were there. They showed me the x-rays. And they said, well, the only way we can actually fix this is either we're going to give you that big horse needle of cortisone. And if that doesn't work, and many times it doesn't, then we have to go in and operate and we have to take the calcium deposits out. And I never had the operation, Drake. I did get the horse needle in the shoulder. It was good for about 10 days, and the pain came right back. And the pain was so bad, it was in my right hand, and I am right-handed, that when I went to drive the car, I had a hard time shifting the car into gear. And so when I had my past life, I went back into a past life where I was back in the West, and I was a marshal, and I was shot point blank in my right shoulder.
Right.
The very next day, about 75 to 80% of the pain that I was experiencing dissipated. And today, which is, it's, I guess now 4 or 5 years later, I have no pain whatsoever in that shoulder. Never had the operation. And as I mentioned, it was documented because I did go to an orthopedic who showed me x-rays and said, there you go. This is why you have all that pain in your shoulder, Mike. And right after that past life, most of the pain dissipated. I would say probably about 9 to 12 months later, no pain, and I haven't had any pain since. And that was back in 2009. Little side note for our listeners.
Yes, that's how you know it's real. But yeah, it's just it's such powerful medicine, and I think Carol Bowman really wrote it well because she wrote about children having past life memories, children younger than 7, because they're still in the kind of like trance-like state that hypnosis gives you.
Yes,
and so they're very tapped into their past lives, but they don't really have the language to express it to us. But a lot of the things they'll say may seem really off the wall, like, oh yeah, I remember when you were my daughter in my past life or whatever. And the mother's like, what? But once they come to the realization, and some of it can be very traumatic, but once they come to the realization, oh, wait, that was that life, and this is this life, and they're 2 different things. The symptoms of whatever's happening just go away.
There are many, many cases of children especially recalling past lives because they don't have all that clutter and all that noise that we have as you move on in life.
Absolutely. They don't have the conditioning.
Right.
And their minds are just wide open.
Now, Drake, I remember you posting up on Facebook. It was a fabulous graphic, and I hope I'm not catching you off guard here, but it was called The Cycle of Life, and it was the cycle of reincarnation.
Yeah, kind of all the steps we go through as we transition through the afterlife and come back again.
Yeah. I was wondering if you could just take our audience through that a little bit. Just explain, what is the cycle of life?
Okay, so, and this, I just want to preface this by saying this comes from thousands and thousands of people being regressed and saying the same thing. So even though we can't prove, quote unquote, that these things exist, through repetition and people saying the same thing over and over again, we have a pretty good idea it's true. And so what happens is, as we pass over, we pass the veil or pass into the afterlife, we see that tunnel of light. Once in a near-death experiences, you go to that tunnel, but your cord is still attached to your physical body. And what happens in an NDE is the spirits that are there are going to say, you can continue past the light through the tunnel, but that cord will be severed and you cannot go back to that physical body. You can only go back in a new body. Or you can go back from this point and continue to finish that life. So let's just say if you really are passing over, you'll pass through the tunnel of light, that cord to the physical body dissolves. You usually go into a life review, and you'll have your spirit guides there. And it really isn't anybody reviewing you. It's you reviewing your life. How do you feel everything occurred? And then, depending on how traumatic your life was, you could go to the Hall of Healing. You can go there for healing and rejuvenation. There are spirits there that can work with your body. You can stay there as long as you want. And once you are done with that, you can move around. You can go to the home where your soul group is. So there's a group of souls that you are connected to and you reincarnate with over and over again. There's a soul guide that's kind of the captain or the head of that group. You can be with them. You can go to the Council of Elders. There's a council there that watches over your progression, and you can ask them all kinds of questions about your purpose and where you are and that kind of thing. You can go to the Hall of Records, which is the Akashic Records, and there's a librarian there, and you can look up anything you want. You can go to schools. You can be developing yourself But then there comes that moment in time when you know it's ready, you're ready, it's time to come back. And so you go to what they call the pre-life selection room. And there you have a seat, and this your spirit guides come in and they show you clips, kind of like movies of what your life might look like, and you can pick out your parents and circumstances, your gender, and all these details. And a lot of times we'll even say, oh, yeah, yeah, I'll do that. I'll take that on, not realizing that once you come down, it's a lot harder than you remembered. But anyways, you kind of line everything up, not saying that everything's predestined when you get here, because you always have free choice. And when you're down here, whatever choices you make are going to alter that pathway. But after the pre-life selection, then the baby's conceived, and you'll come in and out of the baby's body until it's ready to be born. And then you pop in pretty much permanently. And you get amnesia and forget all these wonderful things, and you start your life all over again, kind of like Groundhog Day. You just start living all over again.
Yeah,
And,
we come out and we're all excited, many times to do this new life. And then we get here, we're like, what did I do?
I know, truly. I remember that experience because I was regressed back to the womb, and I remember like looking down at my baby body and just going, "Oh no! Oh hell no!" Just what did I do? I was
Oh,
in that lifetime.
back into the third dimension.
See, that's the thing, is that once you really start clicking in and understanding and really believing all this and everything, it's like, yeah, you can have a sense of humor
Yeah.
because, you just need to have that for sanity. But I think it's totally fascinating. But I'll add one thing to it, and that is that in all the books that I've read, and I'm talking about probably 100 books, it talks about that whatever you expect, whatever you create, is what you're going to get in the afterlife. So let's talk about a fundamental Christian that believes that if you don't believe in Christ, or if you did bad things and you didn't, confess your sins or whatever, that you're going to go to hell and you're going to meet the devil and you're going to burn there. Quite likely that's going to be what you'll find on the other side. And so you can actually create what you want to encounter when you get there.
Interesting. So they can actually create their existence in the afterlife.
Absolutely. And so people will get stuck in the fourth dimension, or they will go to purgatory. Purgatory originally was meant to be a cleansing, not a permanent place for a soul to stay. And so it's kind of like, yeah, it'll exist. If you think you need that, then that's probably where you're going to go. And so the people that you meet on the other side, the souls you meet, the spirits and all that, come in the form of how you can accept them. And so if you believe Jesus is going to come and meet you, Jesus will be there. Or, if you believe your mother, your loving mother that you've missed for so many years is going to be there, she will be there, and she'll be in the form that you remember her by. Even though when we're on the other side, we really exist totally as energy, just energetic bodies.
Drake, you mentioned the fourth dimension. Now, the third dimension's here on Earth. The fifth dimension is where the higher self resides. What then is the fourth dimension?
So the fourth dimension to me is the astral world. It is a world that, let's say, you had a sudden death, unexpected, and you don't believe you're dead. You can get trapped in this fourth dimension and not pass through the tunnel. This is where you don't pass through the tunnel to the fifth dimension. So you're stuck in that in-between world, and you're kind of like an earthbound entity. This is where the ghosts are. The spirits that everybody freaks out over, this is where they are. Pretty much earthbound spirits that are waiting to be shown how to go to the light. And so this is also the space that you travel at night. When you're astral traveling and all that, you travel through the fourth dimension.
Have you ever had a client that in a past life, when it transitioned through the death scene, did not go to the fifth dimension, but actually went to the fourth dimension? Because I have. I'm just curious if you've had the same.
Well, I would then ask you, they didn't stay there permanently? I mean, eventually they got to the fifth dimension, right?
Yes, what happened was they were in the 1800s in France, and she practiced black magic. She was a witch. And when she incarnated into that life, she was told that she had to use her abilities for good, and she did not. She thought she was. She was trying to rectify a government that was oppressing the people at the time in France. And what she was doing, she was casting spells on the ruling class in order to invoke justice or rectify her perception of injustice. But when she passed and then she was heading toward the light, she got pulled back. And she was told, no, you were not supposed to be using your abilities for what you used them for. And so what happened was she was earthbound, and she described the earthbound experience to me. It was very interesting. And she was deep, deep in theta state. It was as if she was drifting in a gray, cloudy environment. She did not have any kind of visuals with regard to any kind of scenery. It was just gray, like a light gray. And she told me that at least her existence in that fourth dimension was linear time. She had to spend the time there between lives. So in other words, she had that life, she went into the fourth dimension, she was there for almost a little over 100 years, and then she reincarnated into this life. It was a very, very interesting session, probably one of the best I've ever had with regard to just what was coming through, because I really hadn't had a client talk about being earthbound before. Most of them go right to the fifth dimension, up to the spirit world, and she did not.
Well, now I find that is an amazing case because it's always been a question in my mind. Do you have to go to the fifth to reincarnate back? And I know in Tibetan Buddhism, they don't believe that. They believe that that's why they read you the Book of the Dead when you're passing over, because if you are like going up, you're on your way to the fifth dimension, and you happen to look over at somebody else and they're creating a baby, you could just like suck right into that body and not, just like bypass the whole process. So you're not even getting all the way to the fifth before you're reincarnating again. And I guess to me, I always thought, oh, we need to go to the fifth because we need to go through this whole process of pre-life selection and all that. But from what you're saying in your experience with her, you don't have to.
It was a remarkable session. Basically, what she explained was her guide and her elder were still there, and they were still guiding and navigating and helping her to get into another life and making the life selection, but did not come through to me like they were doing that in the fifth dimension, that was all being handled in that astral realm, in that fourth dimension.
Well, that's interesting.
It was very interesting. Now, again, that's one case, so I don't want anybody who's listening to jump down my throat. you know, I don't pretend to have all the answers, but it was just one of those cases, one of those sessions which really, really stood out, and it was really remarkable.
Well, this is what I always say. I don't discount anything I hear. There's like a million things I hear that sound absolutely incredible, and I'm not even going to say it's true or not true. I'll say if anything is possible.
That's exactly right, because we don't have all the answers,
Oh, we don't.
Every time we do this work, it's exploratory. We're exploring.
That's probably why I'm so fascinated with it. When I was younger, I would just jump from one thing to the next. I'd get bored with it and I'd jump on, and then I got into the shamanic work and the reincarnation, and I have never been bored, ever.
Now, Drake, do souls only incarnate on Earth? That's a question I ask past life regressionists and those that do between lives work.
Definitely not. There are many, many, many worlds, many, many, many dimensions that we don't even know about. So, you can incarnate to other dimensions, to other planets, to other universes. Many, many people that are here on Earth are what they call star seeds, yes, that have had the prior lives on other planets. I know myself, I've been on other planets. This is where I get the crazy ideas about being hermaphroditic and androgynous and stuff like that.
Yeah, what I'm finding in my work is clients are now going out, they go into the spirit world, and they're visiting their star families. they come to Earth, they go here, they go there. It all depends upon what the lesson is, what it is that they have to develop from a soul perspective. And they head off to go to that school or that dimension, that planet, to go get the education.
Yes, but I have heard that Earth is one of the very hardest schools there is, if not the hardest.
I can attest to that.
So anybody who is here, incarnated and listening to this, know that you are doing the hardest test there is, but you will also be growing exponentially from everything that happens.
Absolutely correct. Now, we're nearing the end of the show, so if you could just take a moment, Drake, and just fill our listeners in on how to best connect with you, that would just be great.
Okay, great. So you can go to my website, which is Drake Enterprises, INNERPRIZES, or you can call or text at 925-348-3336, or you can send me an email at DrakeBearSteven, Stephen with a PH, at pacbell.net.
Well, thank you, Drake, and I'd love to have you come back on the show in the very near future.
Absolutely, I would love to do that.
Well, you have my word that I will make it happen, and you will be back on the show. I had a delightful time. Have a great evening.
You too.
Bye-bye now. And that concludes our discussion with Drake Bear Stephen. And as always, I want to thank everyone for listening, and thank you for your support in visiting the blog, sageofquay.com. And please check out my music and my album, Leaving Dystopia, at laboroflovemusic.com. And remember, live in truth and always serve creation. It's really that simple. See everyone next week. Be safe, enjoy, and God bless.